Alrighty, so before I released my story summary, I made a video about the defense role, which presented reasons I thought the Zenless Zone Zero devs might be removing the role since they hadn't used it in so long. If you haven't watched that video yet, I strongly encourage you to watch it first, because this one is basically a direct sequel. I'm not just responding to Zhao being a new S-rank defense agent. And starting on that, after Zhao's reveal, do I still think the devs might be removing the defense role? Obviously not. But Zhao was not the only news that dropped the week after my video. There was also a dev talk on Bilibili. The ZZZ main page gave us a brief summary, but I fully encourage you to read a transcript or find a version with subtitles if you haven't already. I'm just going to link to Azriel Vanity going over the transcript since it's what I watched. I found the full talk to be quite good, and I think the devs deserve some credit for not using what I would consider softball questions. I felt like most of the questions from that talk came directly from the community instead of being sanitized by marketing. And for me, right now, the most important detail that came from that talk is the reveal that we're supposed to be getting a co-op mode in patch 2.5. So what is co-op going to be like in Zenless Zone Zero? I don't know, but I'm going to speculate. From that same dev talk, we do know it will be different from the version you may have seen from the beta. Essentially, multiplayer notorious hunts, 3 players ganging up on a single boss. Y, in the dev talk, flat out says that they're not doing that. Which is good. I think that just ganging up on a boss would be kinda lame. But up front, I think there's at least one detail that seems likely that maybe we can all agree on. In the new co-op mode, we will control a single character teaming up with up to 2 other players. That alone is kind of a big deal. In many co-op games, you and your friends play the exact same game together. Play something like Diablo, Borderlands, and even modded Elden Ring, and for the most part the game functions exactly the same as when you play single player. There's some balance differences, it's often easier for example, and hopefully just more fun having a friend around, but the moment-to-moment mechanics don't really change. That is not exactly true in Zenless Zone Zero. For it to be true in ZZZ, we'd take a team of 3, and one or more friends would also take a team of 3, and then we would fight together. But running a single character changes ZZZ's core gameplay. Not dramatically, the rules and mechanics are essentially the same. The biggest differences are that you are limited to a single health bar, and you can't use any swap mechanics. Nothing related to the quick swap button works, not even assists, both evasive and defensive. You can actually experience this yourself right now. I've mentioned it before, but something that can be fun to do in ZZZ is to take a single character into Hollow Zero. If you have never done this, I strongly encourage you to give it a shot, especially if you're curious how co-op might feel. No need for modifiers unless you really feel like challenging yourself. Here's an anecdote. A day or two after I finally cleared 15 out of 15 modifiers in Lost Void, I went back to the Battlefront Purge version, the old version with Geppetto, since I still had 2 tasks to clear. To make it a little more challenging for myself, I decided to use Corin solo. I got pretty lucky, as I was able to complete both of those remaining tasks, and I even ran into the super bonus room again. But the highlight of the run wasn't those. It was the first 2 floor bosses. I had to fight Hugo first and the Typhon Destroyer second, and they beat the crap out of me for about 30 minutes each. I'm not a super skilled player in the first place, but those 2 also hit quite hard, and both are easier to counter using defensive assists, which just aren't possible when you're playing a single character. Get good was my only option on the table, needing to consistently dodge all of their attacks in order to survive. I pulled it off, eventually, and it felt great. Zenless Zone Zero is just fundamentally more challenging when you're only using a single character. So, finally circling back to the topic of the defense role in ZZZ, is there maybe a significant place for survival in co-op? I think that's a strong possibility. Let's improve that chance by considering what the bar might be in a co-op mode. Our current endgame mode is built around damage per second, which is a big part of why defense suffers when trying to clear the bar. Giving up damage, whether it be from weaker buffs or just from being staggered by enemy hits, makes it harder to clear the bar. If you are dying during a 20k attempt, then not having enough health or defense is the least of your problems. But there's a potential issue with building co-op around a DPS check. You are no longer in full control of your results. You have to depend on the actions of other players. If you're not new to the internet, then you likely know that cooperative games can end up quite toxic. There's a degree of immaturity involved in that, but, for example, if you're playing a game like League of Legends, and one of your teammates is just consistently feeding the other team, that's very frustrating. You are failing, being punished, and it's completely out of your control. This would be true even if we switched the bar in ZZZ's co-op to something like Don't Die. If you've been fighting for like 2 minutes, and one of your teammates just eats a bunch of hits, dropping dead, your reward is ruined through no fault of your own. If that happens too frequently, well, you probably end up with a toxic community. Players quitting mid-match, or players trying to dictate which characters their teammates can use, or refusing to start a round in the first place if players don't do things their way, the supposed right way. This would be avoided, or at least more manageable, within a guild system or just a circle of friends, but I'm assuming that the devs intend the co-op mode to be possible to clear, or at least earn any polychrome rewards, while playing with complete strangers. So what if the bar in co-op is just finish the fight? If players can resurrect each other, and the reward level doesn't drop the second a teammate dies, then that would encourage teamwork versus rage quitting. It would encourage us to finish the fight, regardless of how much is going wrong. I'm really hoping the devs are planning this to be the goal, since it will temper the toxicity. Plus, doing this would 100% give defense a role in Zenless Zone Zero. To put it bluntly, I think the biggest winners in the new co-op mode will be Caesar mains. Not only will they be on-fielding their favorite character the entire fight, but for some casual stranger out there, they will literally be a hero, carrying that team across the finish line. Playing a defense character in co-op would mean keeping the team alive through shared healing and shields, but also by just being tankier than the rest of the team, lasting long enough to pick everyone else up. I think the fights in ZZZ's co-op mode will be designed to outnumber and overwhelm us. And when all you can do is dodge, unless you're in like the top 10% of players, you're probably going to get knocked around in that environment, even occasionally killed. I'm certainly in that boat, based on the solo character runs that I've already done. 2 Thanatos is really annoying the first time you fight it, maybe even still is. But what's it like to fight 4? Or 6? Maybe someone from the top of the tower can tell you, but I don't know. But in my mind, that's the kind of thing I think we might run into in co-op. There's even more to consider with co-op being built around playing a single character. In the previous defense video, I used the possibility of removing the role as a case for the devs updating the kit of legacy characters. I told you this video was a sequel. Well, guess what? Let's scrap the word possibility. At least for co-op, the devs have to update legacy characters. Let's start with something simple. As far as I know, character swap just isn't even a functional button in co-op. Seth, Sokaku, Astra, and even Pan Yinhu currently require a quick swap, both to trigger and target their related buffs. How are those buffs going to work in co-op? I don't know, but clearly they're going to have to change something. Another smaller detail, dear to my heart, is Ben Bigger. I stand to benefit just as much as Caesar mains in a survival-based fight, countering blows, shielding the team, and tanking hits like a champion. But I'm in big trouble if they don't give Ben an actual run animation. My team is going to die of old age if they ever need me to pick them up, if I have to slowly shuffle across a room. Even worse, imagine a co-op rally mission, where one of your teammates is stuck at current Ben speeds the whole time. Outside of co-op, I just swap to Lucy, but solo means there's no one to swap to. And I've been saving the biggest examples for last, Pulchra and Trigger. Pulchra and Trigger's mechanics do not exist while they're on field. In one of my least favorite design decisions, Pulchra actually deletes her resource after 5 seconds if you don't swap characters. She does this immediately if you ever accidentally swap to her. Hopefully that will finally be addressed, because clearly they need to update those Aftershock kits so that those characters actually have a mechanic when you're playing them solo, or soon co-op. Another factor to consider is the issue of enemy design. Many current enemies require defensive assists to weaken them or stun faster. Do we just have to brute force those defenses in co-op? Or are the enemies getting new mechanics too? And now, let's consider the challenge of coordination, particularly with strangers. And I'm not just talking about something simple like coordinating an anomaly team or stunners with attack. In fact, I think that if the devs go with a finish the fight challenge for the bar, I think they largely avoid that issue. I.e., if I choose Hugo, the results would definitely be better with 2 stun teammates. But if my teammates decide they don't want to run stun, the challenge wouldn't auto-fail either. We don't have to end up in a stalemate if someone just decides they're going to play whoever they want, team building be damned. No, to get at what I really want to talk about, let's think back to my previous video where I introduced the idea of removing the defense stat to talk about the risks of making big changes. I think that removing that stat is even less possible now, but instead, let's keep that idea of risk in mind and instead talk about drive discs themselves. How the heck are drive discs going to work in co-op? No quick swaps means Astral Voice doesn't work. Part of Chaos Jazz doesn't work if you can't go off-field. No assists, so Protopunk doesn't work. Hormone Punk would activate at the start of the fight, but never again. And the Elemental Discs would work, but what if I'm running Thunder Metal and no one else in my team runs an electric character? What if 2 of us are running the same discs, which don't stack? I do not have a single clue how they're going to handle this, but maybe we're finally going to get a loadout system. Or maybe discs just won't function at all in co-op. I'm currently in the let's just wait and see camp here, but that does let me bring up my little quote about safety, that it's often safer to not do a thing than to do that thing poorly. By adding co-op, the devs have chosen to do the thing. Safety be damned. I think this is fantastic, and obviously I really hope they don't do it poorly. I can speak from experience here, not with ZZZ, but other projects, but getting permission to gut legacy systems is like programmer Christmas. We are not surgeons trying to get in and out while touching as little as possible. When you let a programmer break the seal, the wish/bucket list of every little detail that has annoyed us for years becomes a to-do list. If you've already accepted the risk of breaking things, what's a few more changes, right? Code that wasn't modular becomes modular, and systems that weren't extensible become extensible. And are there any future ideas you haven't started yet? No time like the present to set the stage for those. The devs have to make some very significant changes to the game in order for co-op to be a great addition. I'm not expecting co-op to just be a gimmick or a limited time event, but a persistent challenge/game mode like Shiyu Defense, Deadly Assault, or maybe the Battle Tower. And a lot of the required changes have the potential to spill over to the rest of the game too. A disc loadout system is more possible now than it has ever been. Legacy discs might change too, just so that they can work in co-op. And the devs definitely need to update the design of some legacy characters. But once you've started, why just stop at some? If the co-op version of Pulchra is more fun to play than the regular version of her, how long would you wait before expecting the changes to spill over? And that idea, changes spilling over, could apply to just about any other character too. The ZZZ team has likely been working on these changes for quite a while, and I'm not just saying that because they tested co-op in beta. If we look at the characters they've added since the start of 2.0, I think we find that they all work in a single character on-field environment. I'm not so sure about 1.7. Hugo is a maybe, but I've never actually tried using him solo, and I don't have Vivian, so I don't really know how she works solo either. But back on track. Yuzuha is the only one that immediately comes to mind, not being able to use her aftershock stacks. But unlike Pulchra and Trigger, she doesn't actually need those to trigger her core mechanic. I'm optimistic she'll have something similar changed for co-op, just so the stacks in her UI aren't useless, but she's fully functional on field right now. Pan Yinhu actually gets to fully maintain the uptime of his team-wide depleted chi damage bonus, since you can manually trigger his charges at intervals instead of burning all three at once with his quick swap. In fact, extra actions like Yuzuha's block or Jufufu's various kit options make a lot more sense when they're no longer just situationally useful. Running them solo, or in co-op, makes those features a core part of their kit. All of the discs added in 2.0 work fine in co-op too. So I think that at least, since the start of Season 2, the devs have already known they needed to build any new content around a single character co-op mode. And that's all I've got for this one. I don't have any insider knowledge, so all of this was speculative. But I hope a lot of these ideas at least seem plausible. I think co-op is a place where the defense role can truly shine, and I think the devs are taking a huge risk with the amount of changes potentially coming in 2.5. I'm 100% pulling for them though, hoping they stick the landing. Maybe also be prepared to give the devs a little leeway if there's some delays or teething issues related to these changes. I think there's a realistic chance that we'll see connectivity issues and bugs related to that future update. As for foreseeable issues, like rewards that encourage toxic behavior or not updating mechanics that just don't work in a single character environment, I think we can all still be quite upset about those. Hoping for the best, I am really looking forward to finding out more over the holidays as we approach the release of 2.5 in the new year. It seems to me that the 2.5 update is probably going to be the most significant update to the game since launch. If you've got any friends that might be interested in trying out ZZZ's co-op gameplay, make sure to remind them that there's no better time to start playing than right now, if they want to be ready for it.